Section 10. And be it further enacted, that the said company chartered by the state of Kansas shall complete 100 miles of their said road, commencing at the mouth of the Kansas River, as aforesaid, within 2 years, after filing their assent to the conditions of this act, as herein provided, and 100 miles per year thereafter until the whole is completed. And the said Central Pacific Railroad Company of California shall complete 50 miles of their said road within 2 years, after filing their assent to the provisions of this act, as herein provided, and 50 miles per year thereafter until the whole is completed, and after completing their roads, respectively. Said companies, or either of them, may unite upon equal terms with the first named company in constructing so much of said railroad and telegraph line and branch railroads and telegraph lines in Louise Act hereinafter mentioned, through the territories from the state of California to the Missouri River, as shall then remain to be constructed, on the same terms and conditions as provided in this act in relation to the said Union Pacific Railroad Company, and the Hannibal and St. Joseph Railroad, the Pacific Railroad Company of Missouri, and the first named company, or either of them, on filing their assent to this act, as aforesaid, may unite upon equal terms, under this act, with the said Kansas Company, in constructing said railroad and telegraph, to said meridian of longitude, with the consent of the said state of Kansas. And in case said first named company shall complete their line to the eastern boundary of California, before it is completed across said state by the Central Pacific Railroad Company of California, said first named company is hereby authorized to continue in constructing the same through California, with the consent of said state, upon the terms mentioned in this act, until said roads shall meet and connect, and the whole line of said railroad and telegraph is completed, and the Central Pacific Railroad Company of California, after completing its road across said state, is authorized to continue the construction of said railroad and telegraph through the territories of the United States to the Missouri River, including the branch roads specified in this act, upon the routes hereinbefore and hereinafter indicated, on the terms and conditions provided in this act in relation to the said Union Pacific Railroad Company, until said roads shall meet and connect, and the whole line of said railroad and branches and telegraph is completed. Section 11. And be it further enacted, that, for 300 miles of said road most mountainous and difficult of construction, to wit, 150 miles westwardly from the eastern base of the Rocky Mountains, and 150 miles eastwardly from the western base of the Sierra Nevada Mountains, said points, to be fixed by the President of the United States, the bonds to be issued to it and the construction thereof shall be treble the number per mile hereinbefore provided, and the same shall be issued, and the lands herein granted be set apart, upon the construction of every 20 miles thereof, upon the certificate of the Commissioners as aforesaid, that 20 consecutive miles of the same are completed, and between the sections last named of 150 miles each, the bonds to be issued to it and the construction thereof shall be double the number per mile first mentioned, and the same shall be issued, and the lands herein granted be set apart, upon the construction of every 20 miles thereof, upon the certificate of the Commissioners as aforesaid, that 20 consecutive miles of the same are completed, provided that no more than 50,000 of said bonds shall be issued under this act to it in constructing the main line of said railroad and telegraph. Section 12. And be it further enacted, that, whenever the route of said railroad shall cross the boundary of any state or territory, or said meridian of longitude, the two companies meeting, or uniting there shall agree upon its location at that point, with reference to the most direct and practicable through route, and in case of difference between them as to said location, the President of the United States shall determine the said location, the companies named in each state and territory, to locate the road across the same between the points so agreed upon, except as herein provided. The track upon the entire line of railroad and branches shall be of uniform width, to be determined by the President of the United States, so that, when completed, cars can be run from the Missouri River to the Pacific coast. The grades and curves shall not exceed the maximum grades and curves of the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. The whole line of said railroad and branches and telegraph shall be operated and used for all purposes of communication, travel, and transportation, so far as the public and government are concerned, as one connected, continuous line, and the companies herein named in Missouri, Kansas, and California, filing their assent to the provisions of this act, shall receive and transport all iron rails, chairs, spikes, ties, timber, and all materials required for constructing and furnishing said first mentioned line between the aforesaid point on the 100th meridian of longitude and western boundary of Nevada Territory, whenever the same is required by said first named company at cost over that portion of the roads of said companies constructed under the provisions of this Act, Section 13. And be it further enacted that the Hannibal and St. Joseph Railroad Company of Missouri may extend its roads from St. Joseph via Atchison to connect and unite with the road through Kansas upon filing its assent to the provisions of this Act upon the same terms and conditions in all respects for 100 miles in length next to the Missouri River, as are provided in this Act for the construction of the railroad and telegraph line first mentioned, and may for this purpose use any railroad charter which has been or may be granted by the legislature of Kansas, provided that, if actual survey shall render it desirable, the said company may construct their road, with the consent of the Kansas legislature, on the most direct and practicable route west from St. Joseph, Missouri, so as to connect and unite with the road leading from the western boundary of Iowa at any point east of the 100th meridian of west longitude, or with the main trunk road at said point, but in no event shall lands or bonds be given to said company, as herein directed, to aid in the construction of their said road for a greater distance than 100 miles. And the Leavenworth, Pawnee, and Western Railroad Company of Kansas may construct their road from Leavenworth to unite with the road through Kansas, Section 14. And be it further enacted that the said Union Pacific Railroad Company is hereby authorized and required to construct a single line of railroad and telegraph from a point on the western boundary of the state of Iowa to be fixed by the President of the United States upon the most direct and practicable route, to be subject to his approval, so as to form a connection with the lines of said company at some point on the 100th meridian of longitude aforesaid, from the point of commencement on the western boundary of the state of Iowa, upon the same terms and conditions, in all respects, as are contained in this Act, for the construction of the said railroad and telegraph first mentioned, and the said Union Pacific Railroad Company shall complete 100 miles of the road and telegraph, in this section provided for, in 2 years, after filing their assent to the conditions of this Act, as by the terms of this Act required, and at the rate of 100 miles per year thereafter, until the whole is completed, provided that a failure upon the part of said company to make said connection in the time aforesaid, and to perform the obligations imposed on said company by this section, and to operate said road in the same manner as the main line shall be operated, shall forfeit to the government of the United States all the rights, privileges, and franchises granted to and conferred upon said company by this Act. And whenever there shall be a line of railroad completed through Minnesota or Iowa to Sioux City, then the said Pacific Railroad Company is hereby authorized and required to construct a railroad and telegraph from said Sioux City, upon the most direct and practicable route, to a point on, and so as to connect with, the branch railroad and telegraph, in the section herein before mentioned, or with the said Union Pacific Railroad, said point of junction, to be fixed by the President of the United States, not further west than the 100th meridian of longitude aforesaid, and on the same terms and conditions as provided in this Act, for the construction of the Union Pacific Railroad, as aforesaid, and to complete the same at the rate of 100 miles per year. And should said company fail to comply with the requirements of this Act in relation to the said Sioux City Railroad and Telegraph, the said company shall suffer the same forfeitures prescribed in relation to the Iowa Branch Railroad and Telegraph herein before mentioned,